Hey everyone, Dennis Chang here in Osaka, Japan. This hotel that doesn't even have a chair, so I have to sit on the bed. Okay, today is a continuation of what I talked about last week, but a different angle. This whole thing about being self-reliant, about being independent, about being a go-getter is so important to getting better as a musician. And being a go-getter doesn't mean like going to find different teachers expecting them to make you a go-getter, because that's something that I encounter a lot, and sometimes why I'm reluctant to teach people like that, because if you want to fix yourself, you have to start by fixing yourself, and then you get help along the way. But at least in music, I'm not talking about medical stuff here. Well, some certain psychological things, yes, but I know people who spend so much money on lessons, even traveling to different countries, getting to different environments, going to like fancy schools and everything, and still not get anything out of it. Nothing. Why is that? Because they're expecting other people to solve the internal problem for them. Now, it could happen that you go to a school or you find a teacher that brings upon a kind of epiphany upon you, and then you start to try to fix the things on your own. But those same people, and I'm not targeting anyone specific, because quite a few people have come to me for advice and complaining about, I spent so much time, like, why am I not progressing the way I want to progress? Like, am I not talented? I gave them very detailed instruction about what they have to do. There's certain habits you have to adopt, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, I don't know how you see this. But unless you adopt this, it's going to be very, very hard to progress. These are habits that I've adopted myself, that I've seen other people adopt as well, and they get good. So I've already talked about it in previous videos. But again, these people, they're set in their ways. They completely ignore what I say, and they continue along, just traveling to different schools, teachers, workshops around the world, hoping to find that magic formula that doesn't exist, because you have to help yourself before others can help you. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about my Japanese studies here. I said that in many of my videos that the environment, the community is very important, especially for like learning a language like Japanese or playing music like jazz, gypsy jazz. As I said in previous videos, people will change their environment just for the music or for whatever. People will move to Europe just to be surrounded by gypsy jazz. People will go to New Orleans just to be surrounded by New Orleans music. Go to New York, etc. People do that thing. It's a choice you have to make. I did the opposite. I escaped music to come live in Japan. It's a funny thing. But what I want to say is that actually the environment is a huge, huge, huge thing, but it is not the only thing. And going to the right environment without the right mindset will not make you better either, because there are people who do all the things that I said. They move to Japan to hopefully learn Japanese. They move to France to learn French. They move to France to play gypsy jazz, but they still don't really progress so much, because again, a lot of it is happening here first and foremost before the external factors help us. The next point, which is very, very difficult, it shouldn't be controversial, but it is controversial. Some people get very, very sensitive about this. But you have to be honest with yourself. If this pig is black, it cannot be blue, no matter how much you want to believe it. Now, unless the definition of blue changes, this will always be black. The truth is the truth, and that's just how it is. What am I getting at here? You have to be honest with your own playing. And truth be told, when I was younger, there were a lot of aspects of my playing that I wasn't aware of, that people had to make me aware of. That was very, very difficult to hear But in the end, they were right. My time feel was really, really, really bad. Well, and actually, there were some reasons for the time feel. Um, Part of it was actually related to the technique. I was getting used to the technique, and sometimes when I realized I tried to improvise too much without having a lot of good muscle memory patterns, I ran into technical issues that then affect the rhythmic issues. Whereas now, I think I've worked a lot on my time feel. I still wouldn't say I'm satisfied with it, but it's decent, and that's because I chose to believe the people who told me that my time feel sucked. I worked on it. I recorded myself. I changed the way I perceive time. I trained my ears to perceive time in a better way. I worked on a lot of muscle memory things so that I don't get stuck in situations where the technique is making my rhythmic feel suffer, etc. A lot of things like this. You have to be realistic in that regard. If someone you trust, hopefully someone you trust, not even just someone, actually maybe just not one person, if many people, high level players, are telling you the same thing, there maybe is a likelihood that they're right. And what are they going to do about it? Are you going to say, but that's just me, that's how I am, or not believe them, whatever? It's a choice you have to make. You want to fix it or you don't want to fix it. But the truth is, the problem is there. What are you going to do about it? And then when you want to fix it, then you just have to go for it. You have to... I'm going to change the story a little bit so just no one feels targeted. Let me think. I had a bass player come to me for a specific technique on the double bass. And the way they played was fine, or actually the technique, but they wanted something very specific for a very specific style of bass play. And I told them, all right, well, it's a completely different technique. So what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to use this technique, play it this way, and I would coach them like, no, see, change the angle here like this. See, all right, now look in front of the mirror, see what you're doing. Can you memorize this motion? And after like a few days of daily lessons, they started to get used to the motion. And actually, after a week, they had a message, but I could tell that, okay, you understand what you have to do. You have to go home and keep working this way until it becomes second nature. Unfortunately, so in order for a habit to become second nature, you have to repeat that habit continuously for X amount of time. And you have to avoid, when the situation comes to use that technique, to refer to your old technique. Because that just ruins everything. Well, the week that we spent together, that person actually got the hang of how to practice. But when I saw that person a few months later, it was all gone because they reverted back to their old technique. It's a choice you have to make. You gotta fix something, you go all the way or you don't. This George Benson technique, when I started learning this technique during the pandemic, actually, 4 years ago, wow. What I had to do to get used to the technique is not switch to my previous technique, which was this Gypsy Jazz technique. I had to completely abandon the Gypsy Jazz technique for maybe a year and a half. Completely abandoned it. And there was a brief period where it was very difficult for me to switch between. Now I can. But I remember I was like, like when it came time to use the Gypsy Jazz technique, it was very hard for me to go back to it. Because I was just in that phase where I'm starting to get used to this George Benson picking technique. Now I can switch between the two, no problem. But I had to sacrifice some time. I had to sacrifice my old Gypsy Jazz technique just so that this George Benson thing could feel like second nature. Now it is. It feels very natural to me. It's a choice you have to make. So the next thing I want to talk about is this whole independence thing, this self-reliance thing. You know, me befriending the Sinti community, the Gypsies of Western Europe, really changed my life. It's really affected the way I think about music, about life and everything. I mean, it's a generalization, of course. Every individual is their own person. But one thing that I admire in general about the Sinti culture is that they live as if there is no tomorrow. Everything is in the moment. Tomorrow is tomorrow, today is today. Whatever worries we may have in the future doesn't matter until that day comes. And when it comes, whatever, you find a way to survive. You just find a way. And they do. They're really resourceful and creative in that way. And how does this then affect the music? I'm guilty. I used to be guilty of this too. It's like before, let's say you're learning something and you have doubts. It's like, oh, is this the right technique? Is this a gypsy from Western Europe, the Sinti, don't ask such questions. Whether it's right or not doesn't matter. Whatever happens in the future, hopefully they'll fix it. And that's it. You can give a gypsy like an instrument that they don't even know what it is. They don't even know how it works. Like let's say the Chinese erhu, the Chinese violin. Give it to them. They're gonna find a way within a year to make music out of it. It might not be the right technique, but they'll manage to make it work. That's how Fapi Lafata learned to play the Portuguese guitar. It's a special instrument with a specific technique. Now, I'm not an expert, but from what I understand, Fapi is not playing quote unquote the correct way, the correct Portuguese way, but he found a way to make music with it, and he's making Portuguese music with it, maybe in his own way. I'm not an expert, I don't know. But that's something that I admire a lot. To give you a more concrete example, the violin has centuries of, I guess, standardized education that's been honed over many, many years, over a few centuries. And that's why the level nowadays is extremely high from a technical point of view. You have 12-year-olds playing pieces that 200 years ago were considered like virtuosic pieces. 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds. So the standard has risen considerably because there's standardized education. But a lot of gypsies from Western Europe didn't have access to this education. They were given a violin and then they just find a way to make it work. And you listen to, unfortunately, the dearly recently departed Martin Weiss, played left-handed with Mireille Legrand, or Favino Laurier. A lot of these gypsy violinists, they're playing with their own technique. For those who have the ears for it, you can hear it's not the classical sound at all. But it's their sound and it works. They have their own vibrato. They manage to make the violin work. They're fearless. They're just going to go for it. And so too with music, you have to be fearless. You have to go for it. You have to try things. So one thing I encounter a lot, I said, if you're into like gypsy jazz or jazz, you should try to find that community. Hopefully it exists. If it doesn't, that's another topic. But if it exists, you go find them. You go jam with them. Be humble. If you suck in the beginning, it's okay. But participate as much as you can without getting in other people's way. And as you get better, you try to take more and more space. That's how it is actually with a lot of gypsies in the Netherlands. The kid starts, they're given a guitar and they watch the elders, maybe the elders, put your finger here, and then quietly in the back, they're just, and then after when the elders see that, hey, they know how to play the melody too, I don't know, like, hey, why don't you play the melody? And that's all they do. And then, okay, then after the elders, the cousins, whatever, they solo, then all right, play the melody again. And then as the kid starts to show more maturity, like they can do little things, all right, take one chorus. So don't be afraid, participate, but be humble. That's what I mean by being humble. If you're not at the level, don't take too much space from the people who have the good level, because you're trying to learn from them. And if you take too much space from them, they're not going to be interested in participating in the jam sessions in the future. I've seen this happen. Like in certain countries or cities, they have like a gypsy jazz WhatsApp group. Everyone's participating, like beginners and even pros. They used to get together. Then at one point, the pros stopped showing up. Why? Because the beginners were taking too much space. Beginners have every right to participate, but they have to participate intelligently so as not to push the pro players away. And a lot of the pro players, hopefully they're nice. They are nice people. They want to help, but if they see that the beginners taking too much space, like it shows that a lack of understanding of etiquette, of hierarchy, and such things. Go to jam sessions. Don't be afraid. Try something. Work with a coach to be able to maybe wean your way into it to gain more and more confidence. So that's what I did with the Japanese language. When I moved here, I barely spoke the language. It was very, very, very difficult. I had to get over my fear. What I started doing was I started going out and I recreated the same scenario on a near daily basis. I would go to the don't make fun of me, but I actually practiced. I got my start at the convenience store at the local 7-Eleven and at McDonald's. I would go to these two places and use different forms of very basic Japanese to develop, first of all, my level of understanding when they would talk to me, when they communicate with me. Like, there are so many ways to say things like, do you want fries with that? Would you like a side menu? Do you want to make it a set? Would you like to make it a set? Do you want to make it a combo? Is it to go? Is it to eat here? Are you going to eat here? Is it for takeaway? When you go every day, you're going to get exposed to all these different ways of saying essentially the same thing. And then you retain it, it becomes part of you, and you start to understand how it works as you calculate things in your brain. And then after your response time, and in the beginning is like, would you like a bag with that? At the beginning, no, I don't need a bag. But as time goes on, it's like, no, I don't need a bag. And then it goes, no, it's okay. And I'm so used to it now that this is the same thing in any language. It's like some people they're not very articulate. You know, when you learn from a textbook with audio, they often articulate every word so cleanly and beautifully, but the truth is people don't speak that way necessarily in real life. It's like, would you like to have fries with that? It's like, fries with that? Fries with that? Fries with that? So it's the same thing with Japanese. Like, often I hear, and if you're a beginner, you have no idea what that person just said. But now I'm so used to it because I go every day. I just know when they say, I just know, oh, yeah, no, I don't need a bag. Or maybe, そのままで大丈夫ですか? そのままで大丈夫ですか? Just like, it's so like poorly articulate, but I know what they meant to say. And that's such a great feeling. And this is something you have to do by putting yourself out there, getting over your fear, your shyness of screwing up. You have to screw up in order to learn. But you have to know that you screwed up, and then you go home and you think about why you screwed up. So a lot of this is here. Fearlessness, man. Go for it. I remember the first time I played the song on stage, I wasn't familiar with it and it wasn't so good. It's the name of the song. This I Dig of You. So it wasn't such a good first time for me because I wasn't familiar with the song, the changes yet. What did I do? I went home, I worked on the song. The next time I showed up, played the song again, boop, no problem. Be ready to make mistakes. Be ready to learn from your mistakes. Be outgoing, go for it. Fight for your right to exist. That's something I admire very much of the Gypsies, and they changed my life in that way. There we go. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on all of this. Thank you.